Welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. Hey Adam, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
Very well, thank you, Danny. How are you?
I'm wonderfully well. I mean, yeah, it's a bit rainy outside, but hey, I'm talking to you and that makes everything all good.
Thank you, man. It's been a long time coming, right? We've been trying to get this one in the diary for a while.
Wow. Yeah, just a bit. I mean, I think originally we tried for season 1, right? And then obviously, you know, life was life and busy is busy, but we're here. We made it.
We made it, man. We made it. Hopefully this all goes well and I'm successfully part of season 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It's 3, right?
No, it's going to be season 2, this. I think we're going to squeeze you in the back end of season 2. So yeah, we made the cut off. So Adam, I guess, yeah, first thing I tend to do is I tend to ask my guests to pick 4 numbers, please, if you could, from 1 to 100.
All right. 26.
Yep.
27.
Okay.
And 0. Oh, no, hold on. Did you give me the 0 there? Or no, 1 to 100?
Yeah,
Sorry.
1 to 100.
I was at a casino at the weekend, and they were my lucky numbers. And 0 and 27 came in. That's why I went to that place.
Okay.
Apologies. So I'm going to change it to 5 as well.
5. So we've got 26, 27, number 5, and one more, please.
One more. 13.
Awesome. We will come back to them a little bit later on. So yeah, as you know, Adam, from season 1, I kind of asked my guests to kind of summarise their log line. So can you remember what your log line was?
Yes, I can. I've said my log line is a young and hopeless holiday rep who knows only sun, sea and sangria and very little else. He comes home to attempt a career in learning and development. Will he sink or swim?
Wow, okay. That's a pretty impressive log line right there.
I took inspiration from, because when you said log line, I had to Google it, as you do. And obviously all the log lines I come across were Hollywood film log lines. So I took some inspiration from that. And, you know, I try to think about if it was a story, you know, that this would tantalize and give people a bit of curiosity of what happened to that young and hopeless holiday rep.
I like it. I think you nailed it. So I guess kind of let's start at the beginning, eh? So when you was really young and you was in school, and the teacher would say, Adam, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say to the teacher?
I remember wanting to be a cartoonist, drawing like cartoons, comics, Simpsons characters, Spider-Man, that type of stuff. I'm a bit gutted I never really continued with it, but I think that maybe that's where like my creative edge comes in. I was also, at the same time, the reason I remember that so well and so vividly when I had to talk about like what I wanted to be when I was older was in the same class, one of my best friends at the time, who will remain nameless, when they were asked what they wanted to be when they're older, they said a normal man. I found that quite funny because the picture of a normal man was a man waving at a taxi in a suit. I don't know to this day if he's gone on to be a normal man, but anyway, that's all I remember about that particular moment. but yeah, I wanted to be a cartoonist, basically.
Nice. Okay. So kind of what I want to do is I kind of want to jump in with some buzzwords bingo, and I guess for me it's a case of I'm going to throw some names out at you, some words, sorry. And yeah, I just want to see what comes to mind as soon as I say these words.
Okay,
are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, first one is digital learning.
Convenience.
Okay. Classroom.
Overused.
Okay. L&D.
I would say uncertain.
Okay, and we'll do one more. Performance support.
Underrated.
Okay. So we will definitely get into them for sure. So I guess kind of, yeah, like, you know, for, you know, me and you talk quite a bit, but I guess maybe for our listeners who maybe don't know who you are, maybe you could give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour of kind of where you've come from, right away through to kind of where you are now.
Absolutely. So I started life, and I go back to my log line as a holiday rep. So basically that was if you went on a package holiday with your family or, with your girlfriend or your whatever, I would be the guy that met you off the coach and lead you on the coach to the hotel. And then I would try and sell you a camel safari in the morning at the welcome meeting. And then I'd basically bug you the whole week or 2 weeks on holiday until you go home and tick excellent on my customer service questionnaire. That was basically my job. And I went from different places around Europe, mainly Magaluf, if I'm honest. And at Thomas Cook, you got quite quick progression from an overseas perspective. So I was like rep, supervisor, then went up from there. And when you became a good enough rep or a good enough manager, you had this permission to then train other reps. And that would involve you basically being an induction trainer where floods of reps would come over, you train them, and then they would then be their fully fledged rep from there onwards. And that's when I kind of fell into L&D, really. So I kind of went from an overseas background. I took some time and I was in the UK with Thomas Cook. I was in the most glamorous destinations of Bradford and Peterborough with Thomas Cook, and I had some excellent adventures. I went to the World Cup with Thomas Cook Sport, and I did some crazy ventures, really. Like I went to Dominican Republic for 1 day's worth of training, that type of stuff. And I'd been there a long time, so then I kind of went from there to a consultancy, and I was there for 3 months. And I would say that everyone is allowed a career fail in their life. That was mine, and then I learned a lot from that. Kind of dusted myself down, and then thought, right, L&D, what's the score? Do I still want to be involved with it? Do I not? And I then powered on. I continued, so I didn't sink completely. And I went on to mainly in retail from there. I got my foot in the door in the retail world at Poundland, first of all, which is a very interesting move for me. Then Ted Baker. And then where I kind of probably did a lot of the digital stuff and probably came into my own a little bit was at ASOS, where I've been for the last 4 years. And more recently at Revolut, which is a FinTech startup. And then I've recently accepted another role at a hospitality brand. So if you can keep up with that timeline, then I've been around the block a little bit, but all very different industries. And I feel like I've learned a hell of a lot along the way in terms of like my view and my outlook of L&D, and what I was at the start, which is an out and out stand up deliverer trainer, to kind of my view of where L&D is right now. It's dramatically different. So there you go, Danny. I reckon you've learned a little bit along the way there as well, mate. Did you know all of that timeline?
No, I didn't. But I mean, first things first, right? Congrats on the new role, my friend. Congrats. Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, the first thing I want to know is a little bit about kind of Thomas Cook. I mean, yeah. So kind of what stuff was you doing? I mean, did you meet anyone famous, or kind of, I'm assuming you would, or what? I don't know.
Well, I guess along the way, I saw a few celebs that went on holiday, but they were like kind of Z-list celebs. But I think one of the things that was really interesting, Danny, was like, it felt like I was like on the judging panel of X Factor, because basically this was, we always talk about induction and onboarding, and we still talk about it in L&D, but at Thomas Cook, it was like a league of its own. Basically, if you went through the process of wanting to be a holiday rep, you would go for an interview, then you'd be told, right, you've got to go to an induction, a week-long induction. What they wouldn't tell you is it's actually a week-long assessment. And essentially that week, you'd be in training rooms and be on coaches and be doing like mock welcome meetings. At the same time, you'd be monitored the whole way through. And if you weren't up to standard, you'd be kicked off. But bearing in mind that you probably at this point told a lot of people back home, hey, I'm going over to do this induction course, because it wasn't just in the UK, it was in Mallorca. So we flew you out there, you had this week induction course, and then you might, if you were not up to standard, be sent home. And it was intense to the max. And it was almost felt like a bit of a boot camp that people had to go through. But it was great, because I think it was my first real experience of like learning that, when people are really put under pressure, and when they really did, show their true ability and skills. It was mainly just the practice. If they were doing the job, like if they were on a coach and practicing, or they were doing a mock welcome introduction, that's when they normally would shine. But in terms of, beyond the boot camp part, the one thing I've already mentioned was the Thomas Cook Sport, which was one of my kind of, I'd say, showcase moments at Thomas Cook, because I basically got offered the chance to go over to South Africa for the World Cup to train Thomas Cook guides on how to look after England football fans. That was the gig, which was amazing. But in amongst all of that, I had to look after the likes of Brian Barwick, who was used to be head of, I think, the FA, I think so. And he was talking about football players on first name terms. And of that Thomas Cook period, Thomas Cook Sports, should I say, I also had to train Mel C's dad. It was a really weird one. If he's listening, then sorry, but I'm going to say he was the worst delegate I've ever experienced. He basically came up to me 15 minutes within the first training session. We were training him how to look after customers that might be a little bit naughty on coaches, etc. And he was like, look, I don't need to do this training course. I'm not returning. I'm never coming back. And he left the training room, and I walked him round, and he came back, and he was fine. But other than that, so yeah, when you say celebrities, I don't know if Mel C's dad qualifies as a celebrity, Danny, but maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Yeah, I mean, why not? For the sake of it, why not? I'm sure this is probably the highlight of his career, having you talk about him on a Mindchimp podcast. So,
then all is forgiven.
So kind of you kind of go from Thomas Cook, and then you mentioned the 3 months what you did consultancy, and I can kind of relate to that, with my past and stuff like that. But yeah, kind of. So the consultancy wasn't for you, right? How long did it take you to kind of figure that one out, I guess?
I think that when you come from the corporate world and you go into such a, you're basically then, offering, you have to put something together like a pitch or a report for a client, and the pressure's on and the deadlines are tougher, and, everything's monitored, in terms of your hours and, your workload and your output and everything else. And I think it was just the pressure was too much. But I actually did talk about this whole episode of me working in the consultancy on another podcast that actually never got published. So if the person's listening who never published it, apparently it might come out at a later date. But basically, I referred to it as my favorite mistake, because it was one that I think in any career, not just L&D, you learn a lot from you can take away a lot from your if something doesn't work out, you have to really kind of sit back and reflect on, okay, what was it? What would I avoid next time? And I always say that, when anyone is going through their career, whatever age they are, it's like, if you're allowed to still make a mistake and then pick yourself back up and then move on and be better for it and be stronger for it as a result. So, it was a short stint, Danny. And like you said, if you can relate to it, you're in the same boat as I am, because you probably learned a lot off the back of your, experience. It's just kind of, as long as you come out of it stronger, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I think, to be fair, you lasted way longer than me. I walked out within a week. Yeah, so kind of, and it wasn't necessarily a team or anything like that. It was just the consultancy beast, I guess. I mean, and which is bizarre, because I guess right now I'm at a consultancy, right? But I think the consultancy, what I'm at right now is way more, it feels, and this sounds really kind of what you hear all the time, but it's consulting what has this family feel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, which is actually really nice to be in, and really nice to be a part of. The people are awesome. So yeah, but I guess kind of, I can kind of relate to that. So then you go from there, and you go to, am I right in saying this? You go to ASOS then from that point onwards?
Oh no, you missed two jobs there, Danny. You must have not been listening properly when I told you my timeline. But I did talk very fast, I must admit. I went to the Poundland, and I went to Ted Baker, and they were short. They were quite short stints, but they really helped me get my foot in the door from a retail perspective. And I think that's where I started to, maybe kind of the latter stage at Ted Baker, really kind of start to discover and be more aware of performance support, actually, and the role I took at Ted Baker was only like a short-term role. Basically, they're rolling out this big project that involved a new system, like a new till system. And, one of the things that was talked about from the L&D perspective was lots of classroom training, putting people through classroom. And I at this point was like, this doesn't feel right. And I think one of the things I wanted to kind of point out that, like, this throughout my whole career, even from the very start, the one thing I'd like to think I've always had is empathy for the end user and empathy for the person you're creating or building training for. And, when you consider, building, let's say, for example, you're in a training course that you're being taught how to learn to use a system, and then you're not actually going to use that system for another 3 months, you're going to forget it. And all these sort of realizations came to me at Ted Baker. And I think that's when I kind of started to kind of go, there must be a different way. There must be a way that allows people to learn in workflow. When that problem or that point of need arises, they got somewhere to turn to that isn't a big manual. And I started to look at performance support. And I think it just kind of continued on from there, Danny. So that's when at ASOS, I already had that bit between my teeth that I thought, L&D, I was a bit maybe kind of, I'd felt like I'd seen the training part, the delivery part, and maybe not seen what I needed to see in terms of the impact made from people actually doing anything different as a result of what I was putting in place. So I think that led me into a good place when I went to ASOS to be able to kind of go, right, I want to be the agent of change. I want to be able to go in there and identify real problems and try and solve those real problems, not just kind of like try and put a training course one and done program in that's going to solve everyone's problem. So that's kind of where I really feel like I've started to kind of carve out what is really my kind of, I suppose, principles and approach to learning and development.
So I think this is kind of making me think about, I'm sure I read an article about this actually. I think it was in People, I think it was like a people management article. I think it was with you. I think we were talking about electronic performance support, I think, regarding systems, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I was wearing a really, really bad suit and waistcoat in the video, and I don't like to talk about it too much because if that gets seen by too many people, then I'm done for, especially after working at ASOS. And it was a Ted Baker suit, but I just don't think it just didn't suit me, Danny. But basically, my point in there was, and I think it was the headline that I think it was a training zone article to be precise. But what the article headline was, there's too much of a gap between the training and application. And my point was that, exactly like I said before, the big thing that I think L&D struggle with, and I picked up on this from a post from our very good friend David James, is the word when, and is a problem for learning and development, because they believe that if they schedule a program and someone attends, they're going to remember it all, and then they realize that it's time poor, because what they might put in someone's head at one point, by the time it comes to actually applying what they've put in their head, there's too much of a gap. And I think that was the point I was trying to make, when I was referring to Ted Baker and referring to what I was trying to instill there, is that when you come to sort of training something like a system, you need to have something that's like, I think I refer to it as, performance support, electronic performance support at its very like old school form is that paperclip that we got annoyed by on the Microsoft Word or Microsoft package, where it would come up and say, hey, do you need help? And I think that's, if you had something that would help you at the time you needed it, and it was there for you when you came across a problem or a challenge, then that is ultimately the place you want to get to, and that was my point in that article, really.
It's interesting. I think one of the things, if I can remember rightly, and I think there was another one about performance support as well, which I came across, I think it was a while back actually, but kind of, you talk about this filling the gap, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later on, but that kind of specific versus general. And I think I think in the article you mentioned kind of you fix that gap what Google leaves behind. Kind of, yeah. It's that thing in it. Kind of, I can tell you how to be great at your job, but I can't tell you how to be great at your job at specific company for a specific person.
Absolutely, I think that that's something I've tried to stay true to the whole way through this. I think that we talked about digital, and you asked me at the start, Danny, what do I think about when I think about digital? And I think it's I think that we have a huge amount of opportunity at at in L&D to be able to use digital in the right way. And that for me is servicing useful stuff when it's needed and helps us get closer to the point of need, but also it allows us to really help people in workflow with the right stuff, not just anything. Because I think that's where L&D gets stuck a little bit, is that digital isn't just a learning management system with shed loads of content in. That's not you doing digital. You doing digital is actually helping people with the problems they've got. And I think I always call back to, the best apps or the best websites, whatever, that we go to, that we use in our daily lives, are the stuff that solve problems. And the reason we go back to it every time is because it keeps on solving that problem and it's convenient for us. And that's why I use the word convenience when I was referring to digital, is because if you are solving the problem that they've got at that particular time, whether it be through transition, whether it be whether they're starting an organization, whether they're a new manager, whether they're going through change, whatever it might be, if you are doing that and you're doing, and you're doing it through digital, that is for me the truly great way that L&D can kind of pioneer a new way of thinking digitally, because it's not a content thing. It's not a case of just putting content in front of people and going, there you go, we've solved all your problems. It's like, how can you solve them in a digital way? And I think I'd like to think I've had some great experiences with that on my career, through ASOS and now going into Revolut and hopefully into this new role of being able to solve real problems with digital.
Nice. So kind of, yeah, I mean, obviously being aware to kind of the role, and then you kind of just going to be starting it. But can you tell us a little bit about what this role is, and kind of what's the one thing what's really exciting about this new role?
It's a new challenge, Danny, I think, because it's basically in hospitality across hotels and restaurants. And what you've got, I suppose, that is going to be very different from me, but also equally a challenge I'm very excited by, is you've got a workforce that is not just like office based. You've got a workforce that include like chefs, waiting staff, front desk, and people that are like busy, people that come into work on a Monday and L&D isn't at the forefront of their mind. They're not going, right, where can I go on a course? They're going like, I want to do my job, and like, get out of my way and let me do my job. And like, I think for me, that excites me, because, rather than pulling those type of people off what they're doing and what they love doing onto a training course and going, hey, you need to listen to me for 3 hours. It's going, how can we help them with the actual jobs they're trying to do or what they're trying to achieve? And that's where I really think that, I'm hoping I get the opportunity to really kind of lift them up and give people that are busy with busy jobs to do an opportunity to still develop and progress along the way, and help them with any friction or pain points or problems that they experience through driving L&D forward. And I think the key thing here is, whereas I think L&D sometimes can take people away from work, it's how can L&D work alongside people? How can you be alongside them and not distract them, but just be there when they need you? And you're almost like, the way I think about it is like, you're invisible. You're invisible. You're not there to like drag them away, or even they don't have to think about L&D. You're just there alongside, and when they need you, you're there delivering the goods. That's my view of how L&D should be, really.
Yeah, no, invisible learning is definitely the way forward. I think, and I think I talked about invisible learning a good while, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. But fundamentally, I think one of the quickest wins with let's use the term invisible learning is kind of using the environment, right? The environment is it's a thing, it's a flowing thing, it's a movement, it's this thing. But I think a lot of times when I say we, I mean just in general, but we make the assumption that the environment is static, and actually it's not. It ebbs and flows, and I think once we start tapping into that physical environment, I think that's where we can really target that kind of, in that flow of work. Especially when one example kind of jumped out just thinking about it now is kind of, the thing with the Pret and kind of labelling of, food, what was in the food products and stuff like that. And I think in the end it comes down to, I think that's one of its biggest challenges, right? It's like, how can we give people the way to kind of upskill, learn, whatever, which doesn't take your time away, and where they can have time to give back to the customer as well.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Because for sure that there's lots of reasons why we wouldn't always advocate classroom training, because not only is you're asking people to come off away from their job, and you're losing money the moment they're off the floor, but you then putting information in their head with the hope that they're going to remember it when they actually go back and try to apply it. There's so many reasons, and I think that you're right, Danny. We've known for years, right? Well, maybe centuries, I don't know, that the vast majority of development occurs on the job. And, when you connect people together, and so I guess it's that kind of, why can't we just put more eggs in that basket where we recognise that, hold on a minute, like you said, if it's the environment around people where they get most out of, and they learn most, and they're kind of challenged most and experience most, why are we still forever taking people away from that? And, I think this is where I think L&D has got a little bit of catching up to do, because we're kind of not moving as fast as the business wants us to move. And I think that we're still ever so slightly obsessed with this one and done approach of classroom, and, this idea that we have to be seen to be doing something. And usually that involves you being in front of someone, in a classroom. And I think that's where I think that it still happens, even in the most digital savvy organizations, it definitely still happens. I think that it's one that I think we need to all kind of step back from it and go, actually, when did we, what made us kind of get to that point where it's now become expected that we are delivering training courses?
So kind of just maybe let's step back away from L&D for a second, and you can't use the new role for this question now. So
okay.
So kind of what would you say has been your, and these questions apply to professional, personal, or however you want to take them, Adam. But what's been the biggest personal success for you in the last 12 months?
Last 12 months. I think the one thing at Revolut, bearing in mind, I'm close to kind of 12 months there. I didn't run a single training course, Danny, and that fills me with joy. And I'm not the kind of guy who's going to go, right, I'm not saying no to training courses, but I'm just I was having really good conversations with senior leaders about the problems they're experiencing, working at the speed of the business to solve those problems, and it didn't involve me running a training course. And I think that was one thing I look back on and think I didn't need to. I was leading with digital. We were, we identified a problem, spoke to the user group, found a way of knocking it down, iterating on it, getting feedback, moving on to the next thing, and continually working in that cycle. And it didn't involve me taking people off the floor and taking people away from their job. I think that was one thing that I really liked. And maybe another thing that I'll take away from my experience there that I think is totally underestimated in terms of the future of L&D is automation. I think that I knew a little bit about it probably in my ASOS time, knowing that it's not just about having the right content, it's when it lands in people's inboxes, it's when it lands on their lap, and it's the point they need it. Not because obviously if you've got some really rich content that's super contextual, super specific, super personalized, that's fine. But the next layer up from that is, when does it go to them? When does it drop into their inbox? When is it at the point they need it? And Revolut taught me that because that's what they're all about, is automation, is that for their customer, but doing it for the user is going, okay, how can we, if we've got this content, how can we make sure that it's not just static and it not just sits there and we wait for people to find it? How can we make sure it's dropped into the right person at the right time and the right place? And that's something I will take away that I think will continue to be a big part of learning and development going forward, Danny.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think it sounds awesome to kind of hear that success story as well, because it's a scale, right? You've got one end of say L&D who are all classroom, and then you've got the other end which is kind of all, and I'll use this term, e-learning, the click next kind of example. And then you've got kind of the stuff that you're doing, which is kind of in that sweet spot. It's kind of being really specific and precise with when classroom or training is needed in that respect. But actually, when is it just a simple thing of we just need to make these people better at the job and make it easier for them?
Absolutely. There's one thing, just another kind of moment that I feel like I was going to write a blog on this, and unfortunately never got around to doing it, Danny. But it reminded me of you when I remember when we first started talking, and you expressed talking about fish where the fish are. Is that you can probably what's the quote that you say about what is that?
It's fish where the fish live.
That's the one, right? So I think I want to just like share this very short success story that I was going to write a blog about, particularly with mandatory and compliance training, is that I think it's about using the tools, and this is obviously, it relates to that quote, Danny, is that look at the tools that already exist in an organization. Where are people communicating? Where do they live? What are they doing? And I noticed quite quickly, it took me within my first day to realize that everything through Revolut was through Slack. Everything, the Teams, the chat, the social stuff, that's how work got done. So ultimately, when I was trying to get them over to a learning platform to complete this very good, specific compliance module that we'd created from the ground up, and it was all good content, but that wasn't enough. It was like, how can we make sure it's integrated with Slack? So when they, for example, need to complete it, they don't get an email notification that would be completely alien to them because they don't use email. It's how do we integrate it with Slack? So it felt like it was part of the ecosystem that they lived in already. And I think that goes back to, a few things, which is how can you be alongside the person that you're trying to get in front of? And also, how can you put the fish, how can you basically, to your point, Danny, with your quote, how can you give them the kind of world of L&D that's not a completely in a different world to them? How can you make sure that it's kind of in their space, basically?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that was really kind of a proud moment for me, and that as a result and the output of that was, if you do that and you do that well and you make it part of the world they're already in, then the results showed, because we got incredible results in terms of completion, which I know is, we talk about data, but when it comes to mandatory training, that is still considered a big tick in the box. If you're getting people to complete it, new hires and refreshes, etc., like within the first 2 weeks, you'd have almost like 85 to 90% completion. And that was because all the nudges, the notifications, the pushes, all coming through and all integrated with Slack, which is, a big thing for me, really, making sure that you're integrating it with real life tools they actually use.
Nice. Sounds awesome. And I guess, I think one of the biggest things I do it as a general, but kind of one of the things what L&D tend to do is kind of go, let's bring in this new system. Let's give our users a massive culture shock, a change shock, because they're going away from the stuff which is second nature. So then they've got to go through this learning curve of learning a new system, learning a new platform, getting comfortable with a new system, getting comfortable with a new platform, and whatever else. And you just think, it's pointless. It's absolutely pointless, because then you're going to have to, throw all your money into kind of pushing them there, rather than kind of just allowing them to be where they are. And fundamentally, most of your activity happens wherever your community is anyway. So
yeah, exactly. And how can you kind of be in that? Because otherwise, if you're not, then it basically, if you're not there and you're trying to force them over to, let's say, for example, a learning management system, you're not kind of playing the game, really. You're not being on their, you're not kind of meeting at their terms. You're just trying to push them over to somewhere that's unfamiliar to them. And, that's already an uphill battle if you're doing that. You're trying to kind of say, hey, over here, I'm in this system you've never been before. You're probably going to find it very uncomfortable, but I'm trying to push you to come over here. If you're doing that, and then you've also got content that's not great that they need to go through, it's just not going to happen. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle to try and get people to even get to that place where they're willing to stop what they're doing in their workflow, nip over and log on to your learning management system to go through this click next e-learning, whatever it might be. You're against the tide, basically. So it's kind of, how can you make sure that you're working, with the tools that exist already, would be my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, it sounds like you did some kind of really good audience immersion and kind of really get in, empathise with your user and stuff, and kind of really understand their world. It sounds like you kind of did that from the get-go, which sounds awesome.
Thank you.
No, and so kind of, I guess these questions may feel like coming a bit thick and fast, but that's kind of the idea. However, if you want to go deep in them, let's go deep. It's as light or as deep touch you want to go with these, Adam. But if you used to give a gift of a book to 5 people, and this could be maybe a book what you've read and it's changed your life, or a book what you think everybody should read, what book would you give?
That's a great question, Danny. I think that the one that like stands out for me, um, I think the chimp paradox actually. The kind of the guy who talks about the kind of breaks down the brain in a very simple form, that we've all got that kind of monkey inside our brain that like is desperate to get out and is 5 times stronger than the normal human part of your brain, and you can kind of let it get ahead of you and let it kind of take over you if you allow it to. And that's for me. I thought it was a kind of strong message, because obviously we have to kind of come to terms with this whole the kind of way we think, and the whole logic and feeling each time, and left and right brain. And it just, for me, it kind of allowed me to kind of really articulately see how we work as humans. And that was one of my biggest takeaways from that book, really. So I would probably give that one as a gift for someone who is struggling, or someone who would probably need a reminder that we've all got the same brains, and we've all got the kind of same emotional responses to things, really.
Nice. I loved the in that book the thing where it kind of asks you to name your chimp and make it personal. I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that then kind of it breaks down this kind of confusion and complex thing we have in our heads. It kind of allows you to just simplify it, and if you can do that, then you're kind of halfway there, I guess.
Nice. Okay. So kind of let's go for another span right here. So I guess kind of coming out of the football stadium, 1 million people are going to leave the stadium, and we're all going to see this billboard, and you can put whatever you want on that billboard, whatever message you want to shape 1 million people's minds. What message would you put on that billboard?
Man, you know what? It varies so much. I think oh man, maybe I've been watching too much Black Mirror now, but I think my kind of my quote on that billboard would be "Look up." Maybe. I think we do. I totally. I'm an advocate for tech and advocate for technology and digital and being on your mobile, but sometimes we forget that being in real life and being in that moment sometimes is important. And I've been guilty of that sometimes, Danny, where you're kind of like you're in conversation or you're out for a meal with people, and you're on your phone, or at the very, very worst, you're kind of checking your phone when you shouldn't be, when you get a notification through, when you're driving or something like that. And it's just kind of like those moments of just like, look up, because while the technology can be used for the absolute greater good and for the best, we've got some huge benefits out of it. We need to remind ourselves sometimes it isn't everything, and we need to just be in the moment and be in real life sometimes as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a couple of years, probably 2 or 3 years, when I was at Talk, I went on this kind of it was like a digital boot camp. I can't remember. I think it was something like that. Anyway, I had to create a video about digital, basically, and I learned on this journey kind of when you're out for a meal and someone's talking to you and you're on your phone, it's actually got a name back. It's called phubbing.
Right.
So so there you go. Who knew?
But again, it's maybe that what you're doing there is a bit of a chimp paradox thing. If you put a name to it, it's much easier then to kind of like relate to it and be able to call it out. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I'm going to remember that for sure, because I think there's a lot of people in my life that still do it, so they need to, and including myself. So I definitely need to do it less.
Okay. yeah. It's one of the things I think once you realise it, you kind of go, okay. I was at a Mumford & Sons gig last week, and kind of I was with my partner. I was like, right, I'm going to take one video of this, and then my phone's not coming out again.
Like that.
And it was kind of this whole. Actually, we pay for these experiences, these gigs, these concerts. When you go, I think when last time I went to Glastonbury, my phone never seen light of day. And there's a reason behind that. But it's kind of, I think we've got so used to kind of taking these pictures, and we never really look back at them anyway, do we? We might do the next day, but a week later, it's kind of forgotten about. It's a bit,
absolutely. You kind of get lost in it a little bit, and I think. One thing I recognise, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, and feel free to edit this bit, but when you watch someone else doing it, like going through their phone and like scrolling, and it's not you doing it, you can realise how bizarre, how like just odd it looks, just kind of scrolling with that, like mind-numbingly scrolling through the phone. So yeah, I think there's something in that, despite me being on the bandwagon of digital from an L&D perspective, I still think there's absolutely room to stop looking at your phone at one point and then being, in the moment and having conversations with people, because I think that's often, when I look back at my career, the reason I've got to where I've got to is because it is about those moments where you do build relationships, make connections, and have conversations, really.
Yeah, no, and I think it says a lot about your self-awareness as well, and kind of, I've noticing that, I guess, when you talked about this mindless scrolling, you see, the one main place where I see that is usually when I'm on a tube, and I'm kind of, you stood up and everyone sat down, and you kind of can't help but look at what they're doing, and it's kind of, it's just that constant scroll, and you can tell they're not even properly engaging. They're just scrolling for scrolling's sake. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's there you go. That's my billboard, Danny. So hopefully, but them saying that, I don't know if it would work, because they're looking up at the billboard. They would already be looking up. So maybe it's kind of like, I'd have to work on where the billboard would be located, maybe. So
it's a work in practice. I like it.
Exactly, yeah.
So this question, when I've asked this question, people have gone light touch, people have gone deep, and it's up to you where you want to take this one. But do you even like yourself?
I think you've got to like yourself before you like others. I mean, that's my first thing. Or what do you say? You've got to love yourself before you can love others. Yeah, I think I do. I think that I would say that I'd like to think I make enough people on this earth happy, and certainly bring a smile to their face, make them laugh enough to feel enough from that I would feel like, that I would like myself, given that I give back to others. God, that was hard to do, but I hopefully I answered that clearly.
No, definitely. And I guess kind of, me knowing you personally outside of this podcast, I would agree with that, Adam. Definitely.
Thank you. Well, I will try to continue making you laugh, smile, and all the rest of it, Danny, for making me feel a bit more liked in myself, maybe. Yeah.
Good man. So kind of going back from kind of where you are now, and maybe, in fact, let's just see where this question takes you. So, can you remember the first time you ever got in trouble?
Yeah, I think I can. I think I remember trying to buy alcohol underage, Daddy. Do you mean in trouble in terms of like the police, or do you mean?
It's wherever you want to take this one.
Oh man, well I've already answered now, haven't I? Yeah. I think that would probably be the most significant moment of my life, when I was probably maybe it was like in Summerfield or Iceland, I can't remember, but like I tried to buy booze underage, and I got then escorted back in a police car back home. So that was a significant moment that I remember vividly. And so if I remember it that clearly, then it probably made a big impact on my life, that it was the highest point of troublesome activity I've been involved in.
It's kind of like the stepping stones of life, right? That kind of thing of underage trying to get alcohol. God, they were the days.
Yeah, exactly. But I can assure listeners I haven't been in trouble with the law since then, so it's fine. I'm completely. That was the most criminal activity I've been involved with, so that's good. So hopefully, when it gets aired, that's still the case.
Yeah, imagine if it was completely awkward and you'd been arrested and kind of in the nick. But
banged up, and I was the only podcast guest that is actually in prison.
So kind of coming back into kind of this L&D. So and kind of, I think we've already touched upon it, but maybe. And given kind of, how much insight you've got into your new role, maybe you can apply it to that now, or maybe you can apply it to kind of somewhere like maybe it's like ASOS or whatever, but kind of what is L&D's problem?
Man, I there's a few things here, I think. I mean, I think first of all, like L&D, the top, like the name learning and development, I think that we get wrapped up in that. And like I was chatting to someone the other day about how when I try to explain to someone, Danny, what I do, and I say I work in learning development, and they're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's kind of HR, in that people space." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I train people." And they're like, "What do you mean train people? Like, what physically train them? Like, like a personal trainer?" I'm like, no, I actually train them. And then I have to then say I'm in a classroom, and it's like, and maybe this is the thing that's kind of like causing L&D problems, is that we kind of still haven't got out of the habit of old language, the way of the way we almost position ourselves as like the trainers, or we are the developers. It's like, hold on a minute, it's kind of like that, maybe the we're not doing ourselves any favors by like even the title of our department, or even the role titles that we give ourselves from the very start. If we want to try and redefine and transform into being having a seat at the table and being at the speed of business, then maybe learning and development needs a bit of a look at itself in the mirror and say, hold on, do we need to reevaluate like the job descriptions, the job titles, and even the words we're using to describe the roles in this space?
Yeah. So I kind of go back and forth with this question, and I find it hard sometimes on these podcasts. I try to remain really impartial, but recently I put a post out to say actually L&D is not needed anymore, and if he was a person, we would have performance managed him out now or whatever. And actually, kind of what I said was, actually maybe the new L&D isn't L&D, and it consists of many different parts, and this is the parts what will make it better. But I think L&D has its value, and it does, but I just think it just needs this massive shake. It needs a massive shake.
It does, and it's going to take leaders and people to kind of show the way a little bit, and and demonstrate, be the change you want to see. I can't sit here and moan and complain if I'm not, trying to push for that, the right approach, and the way that we maybe should be thinking about learning development. I think that, but beyond that, Danny, beyond the titles and the names and the buzzwords, I think we also probably are not empathetic enough learning development. I think that, I know that you're a big advocate for this, is like putting your users at the front of the queue, speaking to them, having dialogue with them, almost building with and for them. I think that's really important. It's like, so much of learning and development, we're talking programs, courses, whatever it might be, we take months to, spend ages developing stuff. And then we kind of, the only time we ask for feedback is right at the end of it. And what you often get is people go, yeah, it was nice to get out of the office, or it was nice to, talk to people that are doing the same job as me or whatever. But I think that's the thing. It's like anything, you're building, if we're talking like from a product point of view, whether it's resources, whether it's, content, whatever you want to call it. I think it's if you kind of start with the user in mind, and you're having that dialogue from the very start, and you continue to kind of engage with them throughout that journey, you're only going to move the dial closer and closer to to the problem you're trying to solve. If you are building stuff in isolation, then you're just kind of probably a million miles away from what the user actually wants, and then you're separating yourself further away from the business as well. And that's, I think, ultimately, you ask Danny, what's the problem? Is our learning development possibly too slow? I think it's kind of like we've got to take a lot of lessons from tech teams and working agile, and working with MVPs and iterating, and not having that one and done approach. How do you just build something, get it out there, get feedback on it quickly, and keep on building it and keep on making it better, rather than just trying to kind of make something that's perfect that might get like the fraction of what you're trying to achieve or solve the problem.
I completely agree, actually. I think kind of when just listening in and kind of just thinking about some dots going on in my head, and I think it's, I think this is like a two-parter. Sometimes you've got the L&D teams who have that and have a business backing. So if you look at, say, something what Tracy's doing over at Sky, she kind of has that business backing. They trust in her, and this iterate and whatnot. And then I think you've got other businesses who say, okay, we want this, but actually the business is built on foundations but doesn't allow it. So it's kind of like the voice says yeah, but the business says no. The voice of the business says yeah, but the business says no, because fundamentally the business can't be set up to run like that. And
no, I know what you mean. And I think there's also a challenge as well, is like it's the expectations of stakeholders or, senior people who, shout the loudest that, what do they call them? I think hippos, isn't it? Highly paid people with opinions, something like that. I don't know. I just think that like sometimes it's forced on people, right? We've got to do L&D in this way because that's what we've always done, or that person's asked for it. And I think the way to separate yourself and come away from that, Danny, is, something, when I was at ASOS and, I kind of tried something different. It wasn't big. It was just like off-piste, and it was a bit of experimentation. And I think that if you've got the problem, if you know the problem you're trying to solve, and you can run an experiment to move closer to solve that problem, whatever it might be, then, and it's kind of, if you do it with a small user group and you can quickly get feedback on it, then that's what if you can do more and more of that, then that will help you, rather than just trying to kind of, if you are facing barriers or obstacles in the business and go, no, we have to do it this way, then be a bit maverick, be a bit rogue, and do something different. But do it in a way that allows you to just quickly get feedback, quickly experiment doing something. Don't run a training course, do a lunch and learn. Don't do a lunch and learn, bring people together and network. Don't do that at all and build resources that people can access anytime they want. But as long as you try something, get feedback on it, and if you're getting closer to the point you're trying to get to, which is the problem you're trying to solve, then I think that's the key, really. So, because I do sympathise with people in learning development who want to be the agent for change, want to try and do something different, but they're held back by stakeholder demands, and they're forced to be order takers. And I think that the only way out of that is to try something a little bit different, but do it in a way that doesn't, almost allows you to still kind of do the stuff you're supposed to be doing because people have asked to do it, but try something away from the norm or the day-to-day, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's kind of taking, I think when it comes to kind of this, we want our teams to work agilely or whatever and whatnot, it becomes this bigger system thinking approach. And actually, kind of sometimes the business, especially when it's a business of kind of, this tall, big hierarchy, that change will probably never come. So kind of going back to what you're saying and kind of doing this small iteration and kind of doing it more, not on a hush, but on a small test group, and kind of proving its value very quickly and showing, okay, iterate, here's a value. Kind of, it kind of arms you, right? It arms you going into that stakeholder to say, we can do that way, but actually we've done this and we've done it faster, and it's a better whatever. So it's good insight. So
I think so, Danny. I think that's like that. There's no other way. I think that ASOS, like, and I've talked about this example before, but it was like, I think that it came to a point where I think it was born from frustration that we would continually run performance review training, and it would involve managers being forced to come to a room, sit in it for 3 hours, and then come out of it going, I only came for one thing. So I was like, well, there's, and that was, people would just say, give me the slides and all that sort of stuff. And it was like, it just became a little bit demoralizing. So I think, like, I thought there must be a different way. And ultimately it was, how can we unpack all the problems or the challenges or the pain points that you're experiencing around performance review, build content that you can grab it, get it, and when you need it. And I did that on the fly. I did that kind of like in a small, I did that through a pilot of a small user group, got feedback on it quickly, and then put it in front of stakeholders and said, look, I managed to get to these managers and solve that problem versus how long it would have taken me to put X amount of managers through on training modules. And I think, you're right. It's about arming yourself with that evidence that you can try something quickly and with a small user group, and then come out of it with, I guess, the assets you need to be able to prove that you can move the dial without doing it the norm or what you've been asked to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's sound advice, definitely. So kind of coming away from this, and maybe, one of the things which I think we see in our industry a lot is kind of this, there's an echo chamber sometimes, and sometimes there's a lifting and shifting over ideas and not kind of giving nods to probably an original person who kind of come up with it or whatnot, and no ideas a new idea anymore. It's just an iteration of another idea. But what's your take on kind of this is a two-part question, I guess. But what's your take on the social presence of L&D at the moment, and social being social media? Kind of what's your take on their presence on that?
You mean on terms of like the Twitter and like LinkedIn and I think it's got a good community, right? I think it feels like it's a good community. I think there's still a few people still trying to flog traditional ideas, and you see a few people going at loggerheads that kind of controversial opinions, then they get challenged and whatever, and I think that's completely normal. But I think that ultimately it feels like a strong community of people that one thing I'd say, and again, it's something I've echoed on previous podcasts, and I think that's something I've taken away as a big thing in my career, is L&D feels to me like if you're new in this space and you want to change or challenge yourself and whatever, that people are willing to help you, share ideas, and just be kind of welcome to give you their opinion. I think that's really important to recognize. I think that's what I've come across, is like I feel like even if I don't always stay in touch with people, there's like I know I can lean on people in this space where I'm like going, what do you think of this? Like Danny, you talk, you're a big advocate for this because you've set a lot of this stuff up yourself, like communities, etc. And I can see that it's thriving in the space that you've created. I think that's what L&D strikes me as, a place where people will always continually be willing to share their ideas.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's for everything for every one thing what's probably bad about it is, like you say, there's 5 things what's great about L&D, and fundamentally the people are some of the the most sharing, caring people within an industry, I guess. But so if I was to ask you kind of, maybe it's a grad, maybe it's an apprentice, I don't know, or maybe it's just someone who's looking for the next career change, why should they get into L&D now, given the fact of, there's roles which are kind of, much more, that's how to put it, not future-proofing, much more focused on, future skill sets and whatnot. Why should someone get into L&D now, especially with, the other options that are out there?
Yeah, I refer back to Danny. You mentioned the article right at the very start about like, the Google, and, L&D's job is to do what Google can't, which is, explain to people and guide people to how to be successful in that organization. And I think that's the power that we have, and we can help people through their whole journey, so I think that's the one thing that you can never underestimate about L&D, is like, that we can help people from the moment they literally start, even pre-boarding, from day one, first week, they grow into the company, get used to the culture, then go up to a line manager, then go up another level. You've got the opportunity to go right across the organization to help people through different transitions throughout their whole employee life cycle. And I think that's something you just can't, you can't underestimate. And I think that's something that's like really powerful when you think about it. And I think that's something that if I was trying to explain to someone that you have got that ability to do that, I said, you've got to do it in the right way, and you've got to kind of, not make more pain for them by kind of, being a distraction from a perspective of learning development, but actually just guiding them and helping them along their way. I think that's something I would say to them, is that whole employee life cycle from start to finish, whenever it might be, you've got an opportunity to be there and help them at every step of the way. So, okay. So going back to that kind of thing, and maybe it is someone kind of who's coming into our industry, or maybe it's someone who's been in there and they need some inspiration. Who's the 3 people you recommend everyone should follow? I knew you'd ask me this. I mean, like off the bat straight away, you, Danny. I think you're someone I think that's like brings the L&D community together. With your series, and you've got a whole bunch of people that are kind of giving you their opinion and their insights and their expertise, and I just think that's absolute gold. I really do. So I think that straight away you. But if they're listening to you already, then you would assume they're already following you, right? So therefore, I'll count that as one. I think another one would be David James, a good friend, a mentor, and someone I think I look to in terms of their insight and their I think he's someone who I would consider for sure the thought leader in that space. Alongside that would probably be Nick Shackleton-Jones as well, who I know, has obviously recently released his book. Obviously, I'm plugging it for him here. But it's, those two guys, including yourself, would be, for me, the guys that kind of not only bringing the L&D community together, but really pushing the thinking and the boundaries of how we do it.
Nice. All right. I will. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate
that one, Danny. You accepting that? Like that I've, that's you're one of the three. Is that all right? Can you be
it feels good to be part of that three for sure. So obviously, I don't know David as well as you, but I do know him, and I think he's a top guy. Nick, I know personally. So yeah, I think that them two you mentioned are awesome, and they are the people who are bringing fresh ideas, and I think it's nice to see. I think it's nice to see. Every industry needs people like that, right? And it's a good place to be, I guess.
And I like there's another chap that I've worked with a lot at ASOS, Miles Runham, who is someone who, again, I always talk about like user-centric design and user approach and putting the user at the front of the queue. This is someone who totally believes that, and I think that you read his blogs, should I say, and you can see that user experience is top of the agenda when it comes to his thinking. So that's another one that I would say. So Danny, if you're out, then that's the 3, but you can be included. So that's now 4. So that's fine.
Nice. I like what you did there. So kind of 2 really off-piece questions.
Yep.
Question 1: if you had to leave a set of instructions, the world ends, and you've got to leave a set of instructions to jumpstart the next generation, so to speak, what would your instructions be?
Wow. I wish I'd listened to previous podcasts and know what sort of answers.
These questions weren't in season 1, so do not worry.
Because for the listeners, point of view, I mean, this is quite late at night now, and I'm no, I'm not struggling. It's fine. I wish I had a beer in my hand right now to answer these questions. Sorry, but I don't. So right, just to recap on that is basically a set of instructions. The world needs to start again.
Yeah.
All right. I would say be nice to each other. That would be my first one. That's kind of normal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, that would be it. Oh, sorry, Danny, you really pushed me on that one. Just be nice to each other, because it's a lot harder and a lot more tougher and a bit more difficult to be not nice to people. Just be nice to people. There you go.
I like it. Why have 5 when you can do it in 1, right?
Did you ask for 5? I didn't get that far.
No. I just did a list. But I always, whenever someone says this, I go, right, that's 5 things. That's literally my go-to.
Right, because I'm not going to give you another 4 right now. That's the only one you're going to get.
So maybe one more tough one. Coming to the end now, so I feel like I need to give you at least one tough one.
Sure.
Are humans better at creation or destruction, and why?
Wow, that is a big question. The one that jumped to my head straight away would be destruction, I think. And maybe I went to that place first because I went to disruption rather than destruction, and I thought about in my lifetime how much even technology has been disrupted, and the power of it, and the kind of you look at where you were where we were when we were growing up, and how much your life has changed dramatically through that. So I think there is, I don't know, but I think that feels to me like the most appropriate answer to give. Where we look at the world and we break it down and we go, right, how can we make it better? But we have to break things to do that sometimes, and you have to kind of make mistakes and try things. And I think that's kind of part of destruction, which hopefully has got a little link to disruption, which I think is a word that I've certainly been using a lot more recently, but one that I've seen in my own lifetime that's just been unbelievable, really, considering how far we've come with regards to technology, etc. So, Danny, I hope that's a good enough answer for you.
It is. It's a good answer. So, kind of coming to the end, and kind of right at the very start, I asked you kind of to pick 4 numbers.
Mm.
And your phone numbers are tallied to four random gifts, things on my list. So you're on a desert island and you find these 4 items, and your items are some toothpaste,
Nice.
some
Important.
some bubble bath,
Yep.
a nail clipper,
Yep.
and a bra. So you're on a desert island. What are you doing with these 4 items?
So I've got a toothbrush,
Toothpaste,
toothpaste, right? Yeah.
some bubble bath,
Yeah.
nail clippers,
Yeah.
and a bra.
Right. Let's have a little think about this. I mean, I just suppose if I'm on a desert island, I feel like they're good items to like keep clean with, apart from the bra. I mean, I feel like I'd be able to like maintain some sort of good hygiene regime, hair and beauty, etc. Well, maybe not hair, in fact, but just like clipping my nails, having nice smelling breath, and jumping in the sea and having a bubble bath. I think that kind of feels like I'd be able to kind of look after my health from a hygiene perspective. With the bra, I don't know, Danny. I think that I'll just maybe kind of, if I was that lonely, I would have to kind of like maybe kind of design another kind of friend that was like from sticks and stuff that had a bra just to make it look human, maybe. Just because I'm that desperate and that lonely. Not to say that I would just look at it from afar and go, "There's another person there," because they've got a bra on. I mean, I feel like I'm losing the plot a little bit. I feel like I'm on that desert island now, and I've actually gone insane. Yeah, for the top 3, the toothpaste, the bubble bath, and nail clippers, totally just like look after myself and keep all clean. So when I do get rescued, and then when I do get rescued, I'll have my stick friend who has a bra on. So there you go.
Beautiful.
Jeez,
Beautiful.
That was tough.
So kind of right at the very start, I kind of asked you, what you wanted to be when you grew older. And as you know, Adam, we never really stop growing. We never stop truly developing. So if I was to ask you now, Adam, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say now?
What I say now? Yeah, I think I've given up on the cartoonist thing, Danny. I think that drawing Bart Simpson was about as good as it got, really. So I guess, what would I want to be when I grow up? Definitely not on. I mean, I would maybe a normal man. Is that all right? Can I give that answer? No, I think that you really stumped me now, if I'm honest. I think that maybe it sounds really lame, but no, it doesn't sound lame at all. I think like given the training part of it, I think that, and given the learning development experience, I think just something I've never done, but maybe kind of like would like to do is like work with kids and train kids and teach kids. I think that would be like something I'd be kind of that was something I would maybe look to do potentially. Whether it's kind of a career I venture into or never do. I think it's something I always thought that would be quite heavily rewarding, and you get a lot back from that. So yeah, I think it's got a little slight link to development, but yeah, from an education perspective, I think like teaching kids would be in some capacity. I don't know whether that would be a primary, secondary, whatever, but that would be maybe what I want to be when I'm older.
Nice. I think so. I was lucky enough to kind of work with some young adults, and some of them had kind of been abused or had learning difficulties. I'd say young adults are probably from 16 to 21, and it was by far one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. So I think, yeah, if you get the opportunity, definitely, I think you'll love it, definitely.
Awesome, thank you, Danny.
So Adam, we're at the end, but I guess kind of where can people find out a little bit more about you, follow you, stalk you in the passive way, like in the good way? Where?
I'm happy to open up all social means. I think Adam Harwood at Adam Harwood 26 is my Twitter account. I'd like to think I will start tweeting a lot more. Obviously be tweeting about this podcast when it comes out. But like in terms of like going into this new venture and this new role, and I think in terms of LinkedIn as well, just find me there. Adam Harwood. No, you don't have to kind of look much. I think I may be one of 10 Adam Harwoods. So hopefully you'll know what one that is. But yeah, it's I'd like to kind of post a bit more as much as I can. But yeah, where possible, I will send updates on how I'm getting on and what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Danny. Take care.
Enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye bye.